Hello, and welcome back to the observation deck. I'm glad you've settled in with me today. I want to start by asking you to recall a very specific kind of failure. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. You've finally achieved the thing. The promotion you worked 3 years for. The apartment with the view. The relationship that was supposed to finally quiet the background noise of your life. You're standing in the middle of the life you once imagined and something doesn't line up. The air doesn't feel different. The coffee still tastes like coffee. The world hasn't shifted in the way you thought it would. The click you were waiting for. That internal gear shift into a permanent state of arrived never actually happens. And then something even more unsettling begins to unfold. Your brain moves on. Not traumatically. Not all at once. Just quietly. Almost invisibly. It absorbs your new reality, folds it into the background, and begins to redirect your attention toward the next thing. The next upgrade. The next milestone. The next version of a life that will finally feel different. And here's the uncomfortable truth that sits underneath that entire loop. You're not chasing success. You're chasing the brief window before your brain normalizes it. I spent years watching this cycle, not just in myself, but in the deeper structure of how we operate. And from the observation deck, looking down at the hardwired biology of the human animal, I eventually realized something that reframed the entire experience. You aren't ungrateful. You aren't broken. You aren't failing to appreciate your life. You are running a system that was never designed to let you feel like you've arrived. Your brain is not built to keep you happy. It is built to keep you moving. And for most of human history, that was not a flaw. It was a survival advantage. A system that continually reset your sense of satisfaction, ensured that you didn't stop. It kept you scanning, improving, adapting. It prevented stagnation. In an environment where standing still often meant death. But the environment has changed, and the system hasn't. We are now living in a period of unprecedented acceleration. With the rise of generative AI, digital abundance, and instant access to nearly everything, we have collapsed the distance between desire and result. You can generate something impressive in seconds. You can summon a world-class meal to your door in minutes. You can simulate progress without ever engaging in the underlying process. We have empatized the world for getting, but your nervous system still operates on a completely different set of assumptions built in a world where results were slow, uncertain, and costly. And that mismatch is where the problem begins to compound. Because your brain doesn't measure happiness by what you have. It measures it by how quickly things stop feeling new. This is what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. But framing it that way almost makes it sound harmless, like a neutral quirk of the mind. It isn't. Because in the environment we've built, that mechanism is no longer just regulating your experience. It's being amplified. Happiness doesn't disappear. It expires, and now it expires faster than ever. In the 1970, researchers studied two extreme groups, lottery winners and people who had been paralyzed in accidents. You would expect to find two completely different emotional realities, one elevated, one devastated. But what they found was something far more unsettling. Within about a year, both groups returned to almost the same baseline level of daily happiness they had before their lives changed. Not because their circumstances were the same, but because their brains had recalibrated what normal meant. This is the baseline reset. From an evolutionary perspective, permanent satisfaction is dangerous. A fully satisfied organism stops scanning for threats. It stops improving its position. It stops adapting. So, the system ensures that every peak experience is temporary. The extraordinary becomes the background. And for most of human history, that reset had a natural speed limit. It took time for things to rocknomize. Now it doesn't. Think about the first time you used AI to solve a complex problem. It felt like magic. There was friction before, and suddenly there wasn't. Your brain registered that gap and released a strong reward signal. But look at the same interaction now. You get impatient if it's slow. You get frustrated if it's imperfect. You expect it to work instantly. The magic didn't disappear. It was compressed. In the age of AI, nothing stays extraordinary long enough to register as meaningful. And this is where the deeper trap emerges. When the cost of achieving something drops toward zero, the time it takes for your brain to recognize that achievement also collapses. Effort used to stretch experience. It created duration. It forced your attention to stay engaged. Now everything is immediate, which means everything is fleeting. The faster your life improves, the faster it becomes invisible to you. And that creates a powerful illusion. You begin to believe that the problem is external, that you simply haven't reached the right milestone yet. That you need a better goal, a bigger upgrade, a more appetited life. But the system you are using to measure progress is constantly resetting itself. You are chasing a moving target that is designed to move. Now step back and look at the math. If you are in your 30s, you have roughly 400,000 to 500,000 conscious hours remaining. That sounds like a vast amount of time. But once you subtract sleep, maintenance, and the logistical overhead of being a human being, the number of hours where you are fully present and actively choosing how to live becomes much smaller. And yet, a significant portion of those hours are not being lived. They are being projected. We spend them in anticipation, mentally occupying a future state that we believe will finally deliver a stable sense of satisfaction. We organize our time, our energy, and our decisions around an emotional payoff that our own biology is already preparing to rommelai. You are structuring your life around a reward system that deletes its own rewards. So the question becomes, what actually survives adaptation? What resists this reset? From the observation deck, the pattern is surprisingly consistent. Your brain adapts rapidly to passive gains you receive without sustained engagement. Material upgrades, status changes, convenience, optimization. But it struggles with experiences that require active construction, uncertainty, effort, social complexity, physical and cognitive challenge. A luxury purchase becomes part of the background within weeks. But a difficult experience, project that forces you to stretch, a trip where things go wrong, a conversation that changes your perspective, those remain. Not because they were comfortable, but because they required you to participate. Your brain does not hold on to what you receive. It holds on to what you had to build. And this is why the modern environment feels increasingly hollow. We have removed friction from nearly everything. But friction was never just an obstacle. It was the mechanism that slowed adaptation. It extended presence. It gave experiences weight. When you remove the effort, you don't just make life easier. You make it less real to your nervous system. And there is another layer that compounds this even further. We are not just adapting faster. We are barely present to begin with. Studies suggest that our minds are wandering nearly half the time we are awake. Which means even when something meaningful happens, we are only partially there to experience it. And the moments you are not fully present for are the ones your brain discards the fastest. You cannot build a durable memory out of a moment you never fully inhabited. So now you have two forces working together: accelerated adaptation, diminished presence, which leads to a quiet but profound consequence. Life isn't just moving quickly. It is disappearing before it fully forms. How do you break out of this? You don't do it by chasing better outcomes. You do it by changing what you optimize for. Stop optimizing for results. Start orbising for resistance. In a world where everything is becoming easier, the only experiences that will remain vivid emotionally and cognitively are the ones that cost you something. Not artificially. Not as a performance, but genuinely. The difficult conversation instead of the easy silence. The deep, focused work instead of the effortless shortcut. The uncertain path where you don't know the outcome, but you are fully engaged in the process. That is not separate from your life. That is your life. The feeling you are waiting for at the end only exists inside the effort you are trying to avoid. So the next time you feel the urge to skip ahead, to optimize, to compress, to remove the struggle, pause. Because the end state you are rushing toward is not stable. It exists briefly, and then your brain removes it. The 500,000 hours are passing whether you are present or not. Your default system is designed to keep you chasing, to keep you unsatisfied, to keep you oriented toward the next thing. But you are not completely locked into that system. You can intervene. You can choose to stop treating friction as a problem to eliminate and start treating it as a signal that something matters. Choose what demands your attention. Choose what resists you. Choose what forces you to be present. Because in the end, the only things that stay are the things that changed you. Everything else normalizes. Everything else fades. Everything else was never really yours to begin with. Stop waiting for the moment where everything finally clicks into place. You are already inside your life. The friction is the proof. I'm glad you joined me on the observation deck today. We're not here to fix the system. We're here to understand it well enough to stop being unconsciously driven by it. I'll see you in the next one.